welcome Senator Sessions and Mrs. Sessions. Let me just follow up. You were just asked about Violence Against Women Act and your support. Let's deal with the facts. Let's deal with what was actually voted on. Let's deal with the Violence Against Women Act that you voted against. You strongly oppose the Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act of 2013. Spoke against it. You voted against it. That law expanded protections for some of the most vulnerable groups of domestic violence and sexual assault survivors, students, immigrants, LGBTQ victims, and those on tribal lands. Now, the Justice Department, by all accounts, has done an excellent job implementing and enforcing it over the last 3 years. I believe, and we were both prosecutors, I went to a lot of domestic violence scenes, crime scenes, as a young prosecutor. I believe that all victims of domestic and sexual violence deserve protection. Why did you vote against expanding protections for LGBT victims, students, immigrants, and tribal victims of domestic violence and sexual assault? Why did you vote no?
Mr. Chairman, I did indeed support the bill in 2000 and in 2000.
I'm talking about the bill that is the law today.
I understand
the law
what you're
today
saying.
was passed in 2013 by an overwhelming margin in the Senate and by an overwhelming margin in the Republican-controlled House, signed into law by President Obama. I'm asking about that. Why did you oppose it?
Mr. Chairman, a number of people opposed some of the provisions in that bill, not the entire bill.
I'm just asking about you.
I'm trying to answer.
Go ahead.
So when we voted in the committee, 8 of the 9 Republicans voted against the bill. One of the more concerning provisions was a provision that gave tribal courts jurisdiction to try persons who were not tribal members. That's contrary, I believe, the only time that's ever happened. That was the big concern that I raised, I believe, primarily on the legislation. So I voted with the chairman and the legislation he had that I thought did the job for protecting women, to reauthorize the Violence Against Women Act, but at the same time did not have other things attached to it that I thought were concerning.
Well, on the tribal courts, those have now been prosecuted very carefully. Defendants receive due process rights. They have to. None of the non-Indian defendants who have been prosecuted have appealed to federal courts. Many feel it's made victims on tribal land safer. Do you agree with that? Do you agree with the way the Justice Department has handled such cases?
Mr. Chairman, I do believe that the law has been passed by Congress. I'm interested to see how it plays out in the real world, and I will do my best to make my judgment about how to enforce that as Attorney General. Well, certainly the law itself has many powerful provisions that I'm glad was passed and that is in law and provides protections to women as victims of violence.
On the tribal lands, it's been used and prosecuted for 3 years. Do you feel it's been handled correctly?
Mr. Chairman, I have no understanding of that, but of the results of it so far. I'm interested, first time I've heard it commented on. Let me say this to you directly. In meeting with senators prior to this hearing, I've had quite a number, perhaps more than any other issue, that I learned a lot about, and that is that non-Indians that have been going on to tribal lands and committing crimes, including rape, have not been effectively prosecuted. Now, under current law and historically, they would be prosecuted in the federal government by the United States attorneys. And that has not been happening sufficiently, I am now convinced. So I do think the FBI, particularly maybe the Bureau of Indian Affairs investigators, should be beefed up, and the U.S. attorneys need to do probably a better job of prosecuting cases that need to be prosecuted in federal court.
Those were facts that came out pretty clearly in the hearings before you voted against that provision. That is why Senator Crapo and I and others included it in the bill. But let me, there have not been any tests of that. Nobody's appealed this, nobody's objected to it. But would you be able to, if somebody does, would you be able to defend it in court?
I would defend the statute if it's reasonably defensible. Yes, it's passed by Congress. It would be the duty of the Attorney General, whether they voted for it or support it, to defend it.